Hello, I'm Matt Hernandez, and this is Story Insights. In this and almost every podcast episode, I try to make this be a conversation with you about literature. Today, we're looking at the short story by E.M. Forster. Now, as far as short stories go, this one is a tiny bit on the longer side. This short story is about a woman named Vashti. She lives her whole life basically inside of a cell. They call it a room. It could be a prison cell for all that it matters. People are all pretty unaware of this whole dystopia that they live in. Nearly everybody in this world lives inside of these little cells with no windows, just a table, a chair, and not much else. Now, Vashti gets a call from her son, Kuno, which she seems pleased to take and says that she has a whole 5 minutes to give him her undevoted or her unconditional attention. Now, as soon as she takes the call, she immediately wants to get off. There's a few themes with this. No time. I'm busy. Later on, Central Committee, a devotion to the machine, and what ideas are. Now, I'm going to read the first paragraph here. The airship. Imagine, if you can, a small room, hexagonal in shape, like the cell of a bee. It is lighted neither by window nor by lamp, yet it is filled with a soft radiance. There are no apertures for ventilation, yet the air is fresh. There are no musical instruments, and yet at the moment that my meditation starts, this room is throbbing with the melodious sounds. An armchair in the center, by its side a reading desk. That is all the furniture. And yet in the armchair there sits a swaddled lump of flesh, a woman about 5 feet high, with a face as white as fungus. It is her that this little room belongs. So imagine that. Imagine so white that it looks a bit like fungus. I don't know how short 5 feet tall is in 1909, and there's a very conversational method or approach I try to keep with all these things, and it called her a swaddled lump of flesh. So imagine, she's not too fit or whatever like that. Now, whenever she gets the call from her son, he wants her to go and visit her. He is, I believe, near Wessex, and everybody in this here lives underground. They would travel by airship if they're to travel to another continent and that type of thing. So after she gives her lecture, there's a passage of time and she thinks about it. She goes to visit him. I think a whole part of this chapter of the airship is really just to show us the contrast that people have trouble socializing. Something like a book falls near them, they might freak out. They don't want any light from the outside to touch them. So, imagine some of those moments where you might look up at the sky, and maybe you're not a nature person. I don't know. I don't always feel like the biggest nature person myself, but you just understand that that's beauty that you're looking at times. Well, I should continue with my summary first. So he tells her about his experience. He's gone up to the surface. He says, it's kind of dangerous and stuff. And she says, why? It's allowed. And he says, well, I didn't go through the proper procedure. So you need a proper procedure. You need a respirator just to go outside. I could see the respirator because the air outside is toxic. Though he did not go through the proper channels, and she doesn't understand why he did not go through the proper channels. Why didn't he do that? So she returns home. There's a bit more of a passage of time. He tells her that the machine stops. She says that she doesn't want to believe it. Though she says this, she still tells her friend, I guess for a bit of confirmation bias, and they both sort of laugh this off. Though he mentions that there's some problems with the music. I'm going to read that part in a little bit, and that as time keeps passing by, things start to break down. And some of the video calls no longer work. The beds are no longer working, and eventually the air becomes stale. The water is contaminated. People have to start to try to go outside and try to do something else, anything else. Yeah. So that's about that with that summary. She goes to reunite with her son. He goes to reunite with her. He's dying at that moment. And they say that the machine will not be started again. I don't completely buy a little bit of that with that ending, and that's about it. So here, let's go to a few quotes. On the chapter 3, the homeless. The first of these was the abolition of the respirators. Advanced thinkers like Vashti had always held it foolish to visit the surface of the earth. Airships might be necessary, but what good was it going out for a mere curiosity and crawling along for a mile or two in a terrestrial motor? The habit was vulgar and perhaps faintly improper. It was unproductive of ideas and had no connection with the habits that really mattered. So respirators were abolished, and with them, of course, the terrestrial motors, and except for a few lecturers who complained that they were debarred access to their subject matter, the development was accepted quietly. So imagine this. They don't even have a reason to go outside anymore, and that it's unproductive of ideas. Now, as I'll keep reading along inside the same paragraph, so of course it's unproductive to ideas because to have second, third hand, fourth hand, 10th hand knowledge of something to them is sufficient. In fact, in a way, it's better. Now, when you think about that, oftentimes today, we might conform some of how we use technology and how we write, how we type, and I don't know about think based on the technology. So as using a search engine has changed, I might now type in a question into a search engine rather than just typing in keywords. I mean, I'm sure the keywords are there in a question itself, but the way I use these technologies is a bit different. On every social media platform I might post these podcasts to, the way I type and the way I use them each is a little bit different. Now, imagine here, though, if the machine does not fully comprehend us as people in itself, the understanding is a bit disconnected, the same way eventually people are satisfied with just mere ideas. Now, as they got rid of these terrestrial motors and respirators, they don't even see themselves needing to go outside. As they don't see themselves needing to go outside, I do wonder, as the story continues along and things are beginning to break down, is it possible that maybe people are messing with the machine's already beginning to break down? There's not a need for that. Now there's a lot of speculation there, which I really, really want to do that speculation because I want to, have these chats with you and that type of thing. Okay. So to continue, those who still wanted to know what the Earth was like, and after all, only had to listen to some gramophone or look into some cinematophote. And after the lectures acquiesced, and they found that lectures on the sea were none less stimulating when compiled with other lectures that had already been developed on the same subject. Beware of first-hand ideas, exclaims some of the most advanced of them. First-hand ideas do not really exist. They are but the physical impressions produced by love and fear, and on this gross foundation, who could erect a philosophy? Let your ideas be second-hand, and if possible, 10th hand, for then they will be far removed from that disturbing element, direct observation. Do not learn anything about this subject of mine, the French Revolution. Instead, learn what I think about such and a bunch of names I might butcher on trying to do this in one take. So what I see from that, though, is that imagine some of the platforms we might use that if the ideas are not firsthand, they're thirdhand and all that, I do find that I cannot deny some use in that. Though at the same time, if we're going to deny ourselves, you see something happen, you don't believe that it happened. Well, what would these people ever see happen? These people would not see many things in their own life that happen firsthand. I guess if they did, they'd have the strongest emotional connection for it. Imagine a person really takes an airship only several times in their entire lives. And most of the time, they just travel, they don't travel at all. They stay inside their rooms. So imagine what that whole thing would be like and how whatever impressions they would have from it. Though, if you see something firsthand, is that not your own sample size of one? Would you deny what it is that you're seeing? And I do think that there's a possibility that there is some commentary here against, university and stuff like that. Now, with maybe my opinions of what university might be and stuff like that, I mean, I don't want to taint this with whatever my own opinions are too much. And of all things, I did get this story from a class and I liked it, but it does seem like there could be some kind of criticisms of that type of thing. Okay, I'm going down a little bit to the next part, about a few pages down. Can you imagine anything more absurd, she cried to a friend. A man who was my son believes that the machine is stopping. It would be impious if not mad. The machine is stopping? Her friend replied. What does that mean? The phrase conveys nothing to me, nor to me. He does not refer, I suppose, to the trouble there has been lately with the music. Oh no, of course not. Let us talk about the music. Have you complained to the authorities? Yes, and they say it wants mending, and referred me to the committee of the mending apparatus. I complained to those curious gasping sighs that disfigure the symphonies of the Brisbane school. They sound like someone in pain. The committee of the mending apparatus says that it shall be remedied shortly. Obscurely worried, she resumed her life. For one thing, the defect in the music irritated her. For another thing, she could not forget Kuno's speech. If he had known... So, it goes on for a bit. Now, they described other pieces of technology being destroyed later on, as I'd already kind of said, I believe. But this one sort of gets me, because if you describe music as sounding like it's in pain, it's saying what the content is, not what its label or something like that is. Though it reminds me of, at times, if we see a label, we see a product, we see a model for something, and we still like, oh, I want that, but yet something in its face screams at you like, this is not something good. And yet people are still somehow okay with it. And in this case, it's like, well, I'm turning on the Brisbane School of Music. I guess I'll just listen to it, even though it sounds like somebody crying in pain. And it's just like, no, I mean, I cannot say that there wouldn't be some kind of form of art or music or something that doesn't have some kind of sound of somebody crying like pain. But if that's as far removed as you're trying to listen to at the moment, and that's what you hear, then in a sense, shouldn't that sort of alarm somebody? And it does make me think, and I just realized, I mean, I don't know what this Brisbane School of Music might sound like and all that stuff. Now, maybe you've noticed, and another thought, the central committee in this story. So it mentions central committee many times, and there's a lot of potential things that we could talk about in this story. For one, whenever it says things like central committee, I do have to wonder what was going on in a political climate at that time in 1909 to then say central committee, because it does seem like the story could also be sort of making, or just a sort of commentary on sort of politics and maybe communism or something like that. I mean, I don't know. Okay. With all that said, if I can't think of anything else, or if I do, then maybe I should just kind of just let it go and just stop this. But I'm actually re-recording this because I posted the story on Reddit. Somebody responded that he did his own podcast on this. I didn't post the podcast yet. And he said, I listened to it. The podcast was extremely good. It was called Post-Apocalyptia. And it seems like his whole podcast just focuses on post-apocalyptic stories, whether it's movies, shows, video games, novels, short stories. And it was extremely good. Of course, I want to keep my stuff extremely conversational, so my style and stuff wants to be very different. Though I'm actually re-recording this, if you can tell, because I made a critical error. I described the homes of the people a bit more in terms of building and a bit more in terms of crawling down and out rather than up and out. And though most, if not all, the words still were relevant, the setting of the story is so critical, and that part of the setting was critical. So I felt that I needed to fix that. So fix it, I did. And it's kind of odd because it was a huge mistake and not, but it was big enough to have to re-record. But I will post that podcast episode, in the notes and stuff. And he did a very, very good job with it. He did a whole background of it. He researched a lot of these things. And I really enjoyed it. Thank you. Bye.